Now we're going to look at how we can quickly iterate through an array to, for example, print out all the items. So we're familiar with the for loop. So one way we can do that is to create a for loop. We could use a shortcut that we're given. So we declare I, which represents the index position of the item we're looking at. And what we want to do is we want to basically create a loop that goes as many times as there are positions in the array. So we can actually ask the array for its length. Okay, there aren't many things that are available to us from an array that are particularly useful at this point, but length is one of them. So to do it, we can do names.length. Okay, and note that obviously in this case we have 6 names in our array, so we want to go while I is less than 6, because obviously the highest position is 5. So if we reach 6, we don't want the loop to run again. So if, for example, we wanted to populate the, to print out all the items, we could then write a, I'll break it down to 2 steps. We could say something like string name equals names I, and then we could print out the name. Okay, we could put names I in here as well and just have one line of code. I'm just trying to keep it relatively simple at this point. Okay, so let's see what happens when we run it. Okay, so there we go. We've got the names printed out one line at a time. The other thing we can use a for loop to do is to populate an array. So what we could do, for example, is we could ask the user how many names they want to store, then create an array that size, and then create a loop that goes through the items in the array and populates it. So let's start entirely from scratch with that. So let's decide that we want, oh, be careful here, no, that is the right bracket. We'll ask them to, let's say they want to store the names of some friends. Okay, so please type how many names you want to store. We can use a scanner and we'll read in an integer count of names, and that can be scanner.next integer. We'll just clear the next line that'll be waiting there, so we don't have any problems later on. And then what we could do is we could create a string array of names, and that's going to be a new string array, and the size is going to be the count of the names that we want to store. Okay, so this is going to be whatever size our user chooses. We then want to populate that. So what we could do is we could say for and use a for I loop, and we could the count of names and names dot length are going to be the same value. So we could use either of them. It might be simpler to use names dot length at this stage. Okay. And then what we could do is we could say prompt the user to type a name, and then we could set the item in the array using I as the index. So we could say names I equals, and then we could ask the scanner for its next line. If that looks a little complicated, we could simplify it. We could say string name equals scanner.next line, and then we could say that names I equals name. What we've got to remember is that each time we go through the loop, name will be created and hold a different value, unless the user obviously types in the exact same name. Okay, and then we might write another loop just to print them all out again. So we could say for I is 0, while I is less than names dot length, and we could just print out names I. Okay, so let's just add a little message so we can see where we're up to. Oops. Thank thank you for typing the names. New line, the names you entered were. Okay, so let's just run that, check it works. Won't put a lot of names in, will be there forever. So we'll store 3 names, John, Paul, George. Oops, I did 3 names and I was going to type the Beatles. But there we go, so we've typed our 3 names. Thank you for typing the names. The names you've entered were John, Paul and George. Okay, and obviously I left a space there before the names you've entered. So that works quite well. One thing we can do to simplify things a little bit is when we know the exact size of items in an array, we can have it do a little bit of sort of magic for us. Okay, this won't work for where we're setting items in an array so easily, but where we're sort of just reading them, it works quite nicely, and that is to use another type of loop called a for each loop. Okay, so I'm just going to comment this one out so you've got it for reference. Okay, and what a for each loop lets us do, and you'll see here there's an option for for each. Okay, but if I do that, all it will give me is bracket colon bracket. I'm going to bring the bracket up onto the next line because it looks a bit silly, I think, when you have it on 2 lines. So, and there are our braces for it, and there's the closing brace for hopefully our main method, yes. So what we do here is we, on the right hand side of the colon, we specify the name of the array that we want to go through each item of. So that name of the array is names, okay? And then what we do on this side is we have to specify the type of the thing we're going through. So this has to match the type of the names array. And we have to provide a name for the item that we or to represent each individual item in the array. So I'm going to use name. This is if I change this, so we do. It would help if I put a space in. Then these are a little more comparable. Okay, so this for string name in names with the colon is kind of the equivalent of writing the for loop and creating a variable called name. What we don't have, however, is access to the index. Okay, so we've got to be careful because if we need access to the index, for example, to put items into the array, then we would need to use this style of for loop. But if I just want to print out the names, this works equally well. Okay, so if I comment this out, we've still got our code to read in the variables. Okay, so again we'll do 3, Dom and Chris, and we get the same output, but the syntax is much simpler. Okay, so this is basically gives us the same result as doing this, but we don't have to worry about the index. But again, it's only useful if we don't have the index that it's only useful if we don't need to use that index.